ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति विकास स्वामिनिति नामिने नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So welcome to the Bhakti-vaibhava Course. So now we are dealing with Canto 2, Chapter 2, the Lord in the Heart. So today we will see from text 15 to the rest of the chapter. So just to give a quick recap of what has happened so far. So Shukadeva Goswami gives the example of a person who has actually practiced this Virat Rupa, which he was explaining, meditation on the Virat Rupa, which he was explaining in the first chapter. So he gives the example of Brahma, how Brahma regained his intelligence, he regained his ability to create. All those things Shukadeva Goswami mentions, and then he explains that so the best part of one's life is to not waste one's life. He has to keep his life simple. Nature is providing everything, and so try to lead a simple life and pursue for spiritual elevation. So now in that terms he gives he further gives he elaborates to a practicing yogi. He says that one can meditate on the Paramatma. So we saw the descriptions about Paramatma, what are his features, how he looks like, and how his face is beautiful, how his teeth is, how his smile is beautiful, and his earrings, the cloth, and all the descriptions we saw. And then later he also he goes to explain how one can meditate on the various limbs of the Paramatma, right? And Prabhupada gives an elaborate purport of how in the meditation there could be a disturbance of the mind. The mind has to be purified of all the different kinds of desires. The sex desire is very predominant, so one has to be purified. And then Srila Prabhupada also in the purport sets the standard who can go through the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, or a person who is grossly very much affected with gross desires to enjoy this material world, specifically dominated by gross sexual desires. He should stop with the first two cantos. Until he gets purified, he should not proceed further, Srila Prabhupada explains. So that's what we have seen so far. Now, after having explained about the dharana on the Paramatma, so Shukadeva Goswami explains about two processes here. One is he speaks about immediate liberation. There is a yogi who is little detached. He is not hankering after material desires. So he speaks about how this particular yogi practices, and how by process of the certain mechanical process he employs, and then he could leave the body. And that is one. So that we will be seeing from verses 15 to 21. He explains about that. Then later we will see of a yogi who has material desires. He is interested in going to other planetary systems. He is curious to know about higher planetary systems. And also for one who is so much interested, who has material desires, so he suggests that he has to meditate on the Virat Rupa, and then it's called as Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur also explains that as Krama Mukti, or step by step, gradual process of liberation. So that we will be seeing both those processes. Okay. So in summary, what is explained in this series of verses, we will see here. If a yogi wishes to voluntarily leave his body, he should sit comfortably and follow the following process. Okay, you please look at the text because this is not there in the book. Through meditation, he should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into himself, the living entity, and then merge the living entity into the super self. And by doing this, the living entity becomes situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction. He thus ceases all other activities. This stage is transcendental. it is called Labdhoba Shanti. This state is actually the spiritual world, but indirectly it is described as a state unaffected by time, goodness, passion, ignorance, false ego. The material or causal ocean or material nature, also termed Atma Rama and Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, Labdhopa Shanti, is the goal of Jnana Mishra Bhakti. A devotee of this caliber aspires to taste the soul's joy at being released from the distress of material identification. Okay. Some interesting note from other purports of the Srimad Bhagavatam by Srila Prabhupada, so that we will not get confused of some of the terms that are used which may have a similar terminology, like Labdhopa Shanti. Labdhopa Shanti is never to be confused with Rasagraha. It's a famous verse that we saw in the 17th chapter of the first canto of the Bhagavatam, in which a devotee's joy is Smarang Mukundangri, constant remembrance of the sweetness of the Lord's lotus feet, Rasa, even though that devotee may apparently be fallen from the liberated position. In Prema Bhakti, the soul's eternal personal identity is termed Swarupa Upalabdhi, as Srila Prabhupada explains in the Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 23, Text 18 purport. The real identity of the individual soul lies in understanding or attaining the knowledge that he is eternally a servant of Krishna. So, this is a different state than what we are going to discuss now. Labdhopa Shanti is a little different from what is being said here. In the case of the Swarupa Upalabdhi, it's very clear and he knows that he is eternal servant of Krishna, but that knowledge is not there in the Labdhopa Shanti. So this understanding is called Swarupa Upalabdhi. By culture and devotional service, the devotee gradually comes to understand his actual relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This understanding of one's pure spiritual position is called Swarupa Upalabdhi. And when one attains that stage, he can understand how he is related with the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a servant or friend or as a parent or conjugal lover. So here already the rasas are invoked here, okay, but not in this state. During Labdhopa Shanti, the yogi avoids all godlessness and keeps himself in absolute harmony with the Lord. He places the Lord's lotus feet within his heart and worships them at every moment. To leave this world, a yogi should be fixed in absolute realization. He must extinguish all material desires. He should give up his body through yogic practice, while slowly pushing his life air upward from his navel to his heart. From there, the life air should be pushed to the chest, and from the chest to the root of the palate, and finally to the cerebral hole. He should then give up all material connections and go to the Supreme. What is being read here? If you have read the verses, you could relate to it. What is being in the last few lines that we read? There's a mechanical process that is being mentioned here. What is that process? We have also seen this in the Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter also, other chapters also. Huh? What yoga? Ashtanga yoga you can say, but specifically there is a name that is given. So it's the Kshatriya Chakra yoga that is being mentioned, where the Ashtanga yogis practice that. They just move the prana through the chakras and then the soul comes out of the cerebral hole. Okay, let's proceed with text 15. O king, whenever the yogi desires to leave this planet of human beings, he should not be perplexed about the proper time or place, but should comfortably sit without being disturbed, and regulating the life air, should control the senses by the mind. So Krishna also says this in the Bhagavad Gita, right? He explains that a devotee does not worry about the place or the situation. His mind is always absorbed in the transcendental loving service. Srila Prabhupada points out that. And also in the purport, Srila Prabhupada points out that a successful yogi, for quitting the body, he does not look for what place and which place, what is the situation, because of his absorption in the service of the Lord. Prabhupada speaks there very much about the Bhakti yogi. But on the other hand, the other practitioners, they very much look for the time, place. Krishna discusses about, Krishna Paksha, Shukla Paksha. Krishna also speaks about Dakshinayana, Uttarayana, and all those things. But for a devotee, Prabhupada very clearly summarizes in one of the purport. But for a devotee, he does not see any time, he does not see any place. His whole purpose, whole concentration is how to please the Lord by loving devotional service. Okay, so that's the main point that Prabhupada is touching in this purport. Next verse. Thereafter, Text 16. Thereafter the yogi should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity and then merge the living entity into the super self. And by doing this, the fully satisfied living entity becomes situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction so that he ceases from all other activities. So, we should understand this properly. Actually, we went through this while hearing about Yudhishthira Maharaj, how he left his body, and even other Pandavas also, other yogis also. We just see that there is always the different bodily elements are one after the other elements are curtailed, and as it is explained here, that the mind should be merged with the intelligence should be merged with the living entity should merge with the super self. So what does it actually mean? It's not exactly a physical activity, it is actually the consciousness. The consciousness actually becomes in line with the consciousness of the Lord. In the Isha Upanishad also, we hear Ekatvam Anupashyatah. So what does that Ekatvam Anupashyatah means? Now we have come to the summit of the Vedic understanding. Now we have to merge. Everything becomes one consciousness. Everything becomes one universal consciousness. We have finally attained the height of spirituality. So that these are all the ideas of the Mayavadis. So they think that we lose our identity, we lose our consciousness. Okay, but that's not the point being said here. The point is that the mind should not be disturbed with other desires. Anyatra asha, anya abhilasha should not be there. There should be only one desire. That one desire is the complete desire to in line with the Lord's desire. Or other words, you can see the person who has attained samadhi, in that state of samadhi. So by dharana, when this dharana is more fixed, then it becomes dhyana. Then from there he attains samadhi. So in samadhi, he goes to the stage of Brahman realization. Correct? So in that situation, his mind is not disturbed. So that's the whole point that's being made here. Okay, there is an interesting point that Prabhupada makes here in the purport. Let's look into that. The Lord and His service are identical, being on the absolute plane. Therefore, the unalloyed intelligence and the mind are merged into the Lord, and thus the living entity does not remain a seer himself, but becomes seen by the Lord transcendentally. When the living entity is directly seen by the Lord dictates to him to act according to his desire. And when the living entity follows him perfectly, the living entity ceases to discharge any other duty for his illusory satisfaction. It's a brilliant point. In his pure unalloyed state, the living being attains the stage of full bliss, labdhopashanti, and ceases all material hankerings. And we can see, so this is very, very much specific to the yogi who is practicing. But this kind of a state of being one with the desire of the Lord, or one in consciousness that of the Lord, you can even see in the practice of a devotee. Devotee is so fixed in his service. For example, I just heard one incident. His Holiness Suhotra Maharaj, when he was probably in the Brahmachari days, he was distributing books in US. So one time, what happened? He was distributing books, and there was one pretty girl. She came and then she approached Suhotra Maharaj, and then she was saying that actually I am very much interested in self-realization. I just want to talk more on this. Can you come to the house? Like that, she was asking so many things. But he was so absorbed in book distribution. His thought is only one thought: how to please the Lord, how to please his Guru. Nothing else was there in his mind. How to distribute books, how to give more books to the people, how to save the people. That was his intense absorption. And in that intense absorption, whatever ideas were thrown by this lady, his mind did not waver at all. He just responded to her, I have to distribute books. That was his reply. And then he was just fully focused on distributing books. Okay. So actually after 1 hour, Maharaj thought that, wait a minute, what is she asking? So later he understood, actually she wanted him to come to her house. She had some other sense gratificatory ideas. Are you able to understand what's the point I'm saying? So Lord also, so you are in line with the desire of the Lord. The Lord actually sees you are directed by the Lord at the time when you are completely absorbed in His service. Okay, this is one incident. Another incident, this is a famous incident from the South Indian Sri Vaishnava history, there is one great Arvar called Tondaradipudi Arvar. So this Arvar, it's a big story. I'm just saying one part of it. How absorption in Lord's service, or complete absorption, not allowing the mind to pass here and there, and just trying to focus on our service, very much helps us to be in line with the Lord's desire, and by that we get so much protection from the Lord also. So in this case, you can see that how the Lord protects the devotee when the devotee is ready to take shelter of the Lord. Okay, so this Tondaradipudi Arvar used to have a beautiful garden in Srirangam, and because of that beautiful garden, he will preserve it so nicely, because he knows this garden is for the pleasure of the Lord, and he will always maintain such nice flowers, with great care and love. He will grow nice flowers, and also those flowers he will pluck those flowers, right flowers for the particular day, which garland to be made, which flowers are more, which flowers, the flower combination, like that. Mind is completely absorbed in trying to please the Lord. So one day he was collecting flowers like that. Meanwhile, there was a courtesan. Courtesan is a society girl in Srirangam. She already had a plan to. Now everybody knew that he was a great devotee. So she thought, who is that? Who will not budge to my beauty? So she comes there. She dressed so nicely, and there are so many flowers are there. She comes and then stands next to one flower. So let's say there's a flower here. She comes and stands like that. So he's very busy collecting the flowers, okay? And he just comes and looks at her face. His mind is so absorbed that, he has to collect flowers for the Lord. He looks at the face and then he says, this is not a flower. He goes to the next flower. Can you understand? So this is the absorption that he had in his service. So that's and you see, so this is the point that is being made here. The living being attains a stage of full bliss and ceases all material hankerings. So material hankerings, no more interest, no more interest with movies, no more interest with tennis, no more interest with cricket, no more interest with whatnot, so many things, no interest. So that's the point being made here. And also another example I thought of was Hanuman, how intensely he was absorbed in Lord's service. He had to do a very difficult task. What was the task? The task was he has to find out where is Sita, and he has already entered the apartments of Lanka, and he just was going to each and every palace of Ravana where there are so many queens. The Ravana was enjoying with so many queens, and after all the programs are over, they were all lying undressed. And for a brahmachari to see a woman and to also see women who are undressed is unimaginable. But he was so fixed in the service of Lord Ram, his absorption was to how to please Lord Ram, how to find out Mother Sita, and he was literally going apartment to apartment and trying to figure out whether this lady is it Sita, is it Mother Sita. That was his intention, and his mind was not a little bit also wavered. So much focus on trying to please the Lord. So this is the one amazing thing that we can learn when we are so much absorbed in the service of the Lord, and our intention is only to please the Lord. Then all our material hankerings will not affect us. Whatever material hankerings we will have, Krishna is being the seer, the Lord will give us protection. Okay, so this is a little extended point that we are just speaking here, but that's the whole thing. So illusory, we will not be carried away by illusory satisfaction. Prabhupada says that here. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, here I have an interesting quote. Let's see. The Krishna consciousness movement is like that. Apply your intelligence, apply your mind, apply your senses only for Krishna, and there is no more lust. You are free, there is no sitting place. Just like this glass, there is water. So how you can put in ink? Because there is no sitting place. Similarly, if you place Krishna in your mind, so lust will automatically go away. Just like if you place light in this room, the darkness automatically will go away. There is no place for darkness. Krishna is light. The sun is light. As soon as there is sun rising, the whole darkness of night automatically disappears. So try to place Krishna in your mind, in your sensual activities, in your intelligence. Then there will be no more lust. It will be finished. So this is a lecture Srila Prabhupada gave on the verses Bhagavad Gita 3:31 to 43, January 1, 1969, Los Angeles. So that's an interesting point. So that's how we have to be absorbed. So when our absorption is there, then our service will be done with great enthusiasm. Okay, this is another. So you may say, Prabhuji, I have so many, bad thoughts. Mind is disturbing. Mind is pulling me. Never mind. Bhagavatam is giving us such a solution that this very powerful process of chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, hearing the oral, the powerful sound vibrations of Srimad Bhagavatam will help us to throw away all the desires which are accumulated like garbage. The Bhagavatam gives an example. We will be seeing this verse in the second canto of the Bhagavatam. When there is a very heavy monsoonal rainfall, what happens? In some places there is accumulation of lot of dirt, some small pit of water is there. But when there is a heavy monsoonal rainfall, that rainfall completely removes all this garbage away. It just carries away all this garbage. So that's the verse. When we give proper oral reception, this is what happens. Pravishta karna randrena swanang bhava saroruham dhunoti samalam Krishna salilasya yatasharat. The sound incarnation of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Soul, Srimad Bhagavatam, enters into the heart of a self-realized devotee, sits on the lotus flower of his loving relationship, and thus cleanses the dust of material association such as lust, anger and hankering. Thus it acts like autumnal rains upon pools of muddy water. Okay, there are so many other nice shlokas. Okay, this is a famous one. So how does that happen? So oral reception is the whole key. So Srutekshita Pato, many times Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur used to say, by hearing we can see actually, right? So Twang Bhakti Yoga Paribhavita Hrit Saroja Ashe Srutekshita Pato Nanunata Pungsam Yad Dhyata Urugaya Vibhavayanti Tat Tad Vapu Pranayase Sadanugrahaya. O my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing, and thus their hearts become cleansed, and you take your seat there. You are so merciful to your devotees that you manifest yourself in the particular eternal form of transcendence in which they always think of you. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 9, Text 11. Okay. Now, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, he goes on to explain, okay, when somebody is in that particular state of Labdhopashanti, okay, when his consciousness is in harmony with that of the Lord, what happens? So, what are all the things he will not hanker for? He explains. So, that's why we have put here. Shukadeva Goswami describes the state of fully harmonious consciousness first in the negative by describing what is not. So, what is not? Text 17, let's see. In that transcendental state of Labdhopashanti, there is no supremacy of devastating time which controls even the celestial demigods who are empowered to rule over mundane creatures. And what to speak of any supremacy of the demigods themselves? Nor is there the mode of material goodness, passion or ignorance, nor even the false ego, material causal ocean or material nature. So he goes on to explain that in that particular state of Labdhopashanti, one is not affected. There is no fear, there is no attachment, raga, bhaya, krodha. There is no anger. One is free from all these things. Okay. So Prabhupada makes the point that when the consciousness becomes pure, then that consciousness will gradually direct him to surrender to the Supreme Lord Vasudeva. So that's the point Srila Prabhupada makes in this purport. Srila Prabhupada here, however, points out to make a differentiation between the transcendentalists and the false transcendentalists or the Mayavadis. So, devotee versus impersonalist, destination and form. So here, I was just referring to the verse, Vitaraga Bhayat Krodha Manmaya Maam Upashritaha Bahavo Jnana Tapaso Putamad Bhavam Agataha. So if you remember this verse in the purport, Prabhupada gives a nice elaboration how some of them, because of attachment, what kind of attachment they have? Their attachment is, they are thinking themselves to be this body, and because of the attachment to the body, they never want to die. They always want to be in this body. They think that body is what I am, and so they're scared of their personal existence. So personality, because they will die, and after that death they think that everything is finished, and as a result of that attachment, what happens? A raga bhaya, the fear happens. The fear is that, oh, I may lose my existence, everything will be lost. So that's why these kind of people can never accept the personality of the Lord, because again, anything to do with personality they are very much afraid of. You remember that purport, famous purport. So Prabhupada speaks about that. So they don't want to hear anything about personality, because personality means they think that there is birth, death, old age, disease, there is suffering, there is hankering. But if there is no personality, no identity, then everything is fine. So So they also get frustrated. So Raga, Bhaya and Krodha. So that's what Srila Prabhupada is pointing out here. He says that the impersonalist, because of his neglecting the association of the Lord, does not develop a spiritual body for spiritual activity, but remains a spiritual spark only, merged in the effulgent spiritual rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is a full-fledged form of eternity, bliss and knowledge, but the formless Brahmajyoti is simply eternity and knowledge. The Vaikuntha planets are also forms of eternity, bliss and knowledge, and therefore the devotees of the Lord who are admitted into the abode of the Lord and get bodies of eternity, bliss and knowledge. As such, there is no difference between one and another. The Lord's abode, name, fame, entourage, etc. are of the same transcendental quality, and how this transcendental quality differs from the material world is explained herewith in this verse. So that is the whole point here. In this verse, it is explained that there is a clear distinction between the material world and the spiritual world, where the time factor is not affecting, you are not controlled by anyone. All those things are explained. Are you able to follow? Are you with me? Okay. For your reference, because of short of time, I'm not going to discuss on these things. You can take a look at it. Look at these purports for more elaboration. Prabhupada in the purports, he points out here that in the Bhagavad Gita, 3 principal subjects have been explained by Lord Sri Krishna, namely Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. But one can reach the Vaikuntha planets by the practice of Bhakti Yoga. Now Krishna, in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 15, when delineation by the Supreme Lord in the Uddhava Gita, he actually gives conclusion. Krishna himself concludes of the different yoga processes and what is the best yoga. So you can refer to these verses as a homework. You can read these verses. Canto 11, chapter 15, text 33 to 34, and Canto 11, chapter 15, text 3 to 16. And in text 3 to 16, he gives the 8 mystic perfections that exist in Krishna, and also the lesser perfections are elaborated. Maybe you could just go through the translations and purports of those chapters, which will give you insight how the different Jnana Yoga process, the Ashtanga Yoga process, Krishna also explains this, and then also he gives the superiority of Bhakti Yoga. Okay, so specifically verses from 3 to 34, you can go through it. Okay, Canto 11, chapter 15, text 3 to
last
34.
19 to 27.
Yeah. No, that's also from Bhagavatam, same. I just didn't
15.
put. Yeah, those also from the same Bhagavatam, same chapter. Okay, text 18. The transcendentalists desire to avoid everything godless, for they know that supreme situation in which everything is related with the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Therefore, a pure devotee in absolute harmony with the Lord does not create perplexities, but worships the lotus feet of the Lord at every moment, taking them into his heart. So, Srila Prabhupada here points out the vision and conception of a pure devotee in the purport. He speaks about how the pure devotee's vision is in harmony with the Supreme Lord. That's the main point Srila Prabhupada is speaking here. The vision of a pure devotee is always is amazing. I'll just give you one. Just you can think of Srila Prabhupada himself. One time there was Bhakti-vaibhava Maharaj in his brahmachari days, he was doing preaching in Germany. So once he had gone to Berlin for preaching. They did Harinam, they distributed books and like that. And he wrote a letter to Prabhupada stating that Prabhupada, Berlin, we came to Berlin, we did preaching, it was all very nice, there was good response and like that. So he wrote in a postcard. In the postcard, backside of the postcard, we have seen in Europe there are some postcards where you will have a photo. One side there will be a photo, and then you can write a short message, and then you will have a place for address. In India also you see sometimes like this. So in this picture you will see one famous church in Berlin. Okay, so that church photo was there, and Prabhupada received it. When Prabhupada received that card, so he looked at that photo, and then Prabhupada is he's writing a reply letter to him. He said that. I acknowledge the letter that dated so and so. You please go ahead and try to acquire this place for devotees. And please make so that devotees can stay here, and this could be a great temple for us to distribute books and expand Krishna conscious movement. And then that church is such a very big church, you can't even imagine. And at the time in Germany, ISKCON is gradually just starting, but this is vision of Prabhupada. Prabhupada, whatever he could see, he could transform anything into Vaikuntha. That's the vision of a pure devotee. Okay, that's how he looks at everything. This is when I just heard this memory, it was amazing. So like we can see here how, because his mind is always thinking how to utilize everything in Krishna's service, how to see everything as Krishna's energy. That's how he could see Krishna everywhere. That's the way the pure devotee looks at it. Anything he sees how to use this in Krishna's service, how to use it. He's seeing a tree and he just relates the tree to Krishna consciousness. That's how he looks at it. That's how he sees Krishna everywhere. That's how a devotee looks at it. Okay, so that's the what. And you can see, because of the transcendental understanding, he does not waste time in anything apart from Krishna consciousness. Okay, Prabhupada talks about how some of the false yogis who are impersonalists, they try to merge, and they have false ideas of merging with the impersonal Brahman. We will touch upon this in this purport. So I given a title called Posing Devotees Within the Heart Maintains the Idea of Merging with the God. They show themselves as big spiritualists, but if you just scratch them a little bit, you will figure out that actually you are God, I am God, we are all God. That's their idea. And here Prabhupada points out from Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's commentary that how these people are cheaters, he says. All these non-devotees and debauchees are, according to Vishnu Chakravarti, duratmas or crooked souls in the dress of Mahatmas or great souls. Such non-devotees and debauchees are completely excluded from the list of transcendentalists by the presentation of this particular verse by Shukadeva Goswami. So I'll just read few lines before that. So then when Prabhupada says all these non-devotees, who are those non-devotees? Apart from the class of impersonalists or non-devotees, there are also classes who pose themselves as devotees of the Lord, but at heart they maintain the idea of salvation by becoming one with the impersonal Brahman. These kind of people, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, he is pointing out them as duratmas. Yeah. So Prabhupada points out here, seeing everything in God and God in everything. A pure devotee of the Lord no longer wastes valuable time discriminating Brahman from non-Brahman, because he knows perfectly well that the Lord Parabrahman, by his Brahman energy, is interwoven into everything, and thus everything is looked upon by a devotee as the property of the Lord. The devotee tries to engage everything in his service and does not create perplexities by falsely lording it over the creation of the Lord. This we saw in the previous purport also, right? How the devotee does not misuse anything, because he knows everything is Lord's energy. He does not even waste one drop of water. He does not waste any resource that is provided to him in the service of the Lord. Everything he carefully uses in the Lord's service. That's the... So Prabhupada further he says, he is so faithful that he engages himself as well as everything else in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. In everything, the devotee sees the Lord, and he sees everything in the Lord. The specific disturbance created by a duratma or crooked soul is due to his maintaining that the transcendental form of the Lord is something material. Again, Prabhupada points out that this misunderstanding is the cause of all cheating and all exploitation. Okay. Now further, he goes on to say, by the strength of the, text 19, by the strength of the scientific knowledge, one should be well situated in absolute realization and thus be able to distinguish all material desires. One should then give up the material body by blocking the air hole through which stool is evacuated with the heel of one's foot, and by lifting the life air from one place to another in the 6 primary places. Here again a mechanical process of the yogi is mentioned, how he takes endeavors to control the life airs. He's just trying to cover it up. Okay, I'm just proceeding further. So Prabhupada speaks about mechanical process against chanting of the holy name. The expert yogi who has thoroughly practiced the control of the life air by the prescribed method of the yoga system is advised to quit the body as follows. So he speaks about how complicated it is. You see here, he should plug up the evacuating hole with the heel of the foot and then progressively move the life air on and on to 6 places: the navel, abdomen, heart, chest, palate, eyebrows and cerebral pit. Controlling the life air by the prescribed yogic process is mechanical, and the practice is more or less a physical endeavor for spiritual perfection. It's a literal mechanical process. In golden days, such practice was very common for the transcendentalists. So basically, it's again an Ashtanga Yoga process where we saw about the pratyahara, in the mind not being allowed to any sense objects, the stage of Labdha Prashanti we saw, and then now the stages of trying to completely control the life air is being explained in this particular verse. Now let's move to the next verse. Now Prabhupada, that's the whole point. In the Prabhupada again hints, he's saying that concentration of the mind is more easily attained in these days by the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. The results are more effective than those derived from the inner exercise of the life air. You see, it's in the traditional system, the pranayama is there, sitting postures are there. Yeah, it's good to sit and then perform any spiritual activity. Generally we see great yogis, they used to sit and then do, that is also recommended in the shastras. It's the yoga system helps that. It is good. We also can do that. But nevertheless, the bhakti process is so powerful, and we see the current acharyas, they have also done this. For example, we can take the example of Srila Bhakti-vaibhava Thakur. He has also walked and chanted. Sometimes we have to sit and chant. That is the perfection, ideal perfection. So sitting and chanting or walking and chanting, the perfection is there when we can chant the names clearly and try to hear them. Our absorption should be on the holy name. Okay, this is a very important point to remember. So that's a key point here. So you sit or walk. So we have seen the current acharyas, they have like Srila Bhakti-vaibhava Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur himself, our own Srila Prabhupada, they are all walking and chanting. So now I'm not criticizing if somebody is sitting and chanting. That's very nice if you can sit and chant. But what is the essence between walking and chanting or sitting and chanting? The essence is, are you hearing the holy name? Is your mind absorbed in hearing the holy name? This is the whole point. The whole yoga practice is to come in touch with the Lord. Yoga means connection. Is a connection established? So that's what is the whole key point. Okay. Then here Prabhupada makes a point here just to make sure that this is a simple and easy process and you attain the perfection by this process. Prabhupada is, after speaking about all this mechanical process, he just hints. Again and again you will see Prabhupada will be hinting about this chanting given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, text 20. The meditative devotee should slowly push up the life air from the navel to the heart, from there to the chest, and from there to the root of the palate. He should search out the proper places with intelligence. So again, Prabhupada is giving a warning here. He speaks about how it's a little difficult. He says, if a devotee is able to continue on the Brahmabhuta platform, he enters the spiritual sky automatically after death and returns to Godhead. Consequently, a devotee need not feel sorry for not having practiced the Kundalini chakra or not penetrating the 6 chakras one after another. This is the quote I am reading. Okay. So sometimes sometimes some people speaks about different chakra yoga. If you do not know about any of these, there's nothing to worry. That's what Prabhupada is pointing out. As far as Maharaj Prithu was concerned, he had already practiced this process, and since he did not want to wait for the time when his death would occur, naturally he took advantage of the Shat Chakra penetration process, thus gave up the body according to his own free will and immediately entered the spiritual sky. Okay. So whenever the yogis, those who have learned this process, they don't wait for the actual death to happen. They themselves accelerate their leaving this world they are leaving the body from this world. Okay. Now see this interesting conversation with Prabhupada. One guest devotee is speaking. Well, sometimes I feel what they call chakras. Like I feel very light over here, and I feel something swirling over here that I think they call the 1,000-petal lotus. Is this just my imagination, or are these things real? Prabhupada. Yes, it is imagination. If you just open your skull, you will find no lotus there. So it is your imagination, that's all. These imaginations are prescribed for persons who are too much absorbed in this bodily concept of life. Here is a lotus, here is a Manasarovara, and here is an ocean of bliss. Here is, you have to find out, just to make him concentrate, just like a naughty boy, to make him stop nonsense doing. Please sit down here, stop this all, our proposition. I am not this body. Even there is lotus, I don't care for it. Do you follow? I am not this body. Even there is lotus. What I have to do with this lotus? My first proposition is, I am not this body. Guest devotee. But I think in air, in the Bhagavad Gita, somewhere it says that at death you are supposed to concentrate on the air at the top of the head. Prabhupada, that concentration in the Bhagavad Gita, I do not know where it is. But in the yoga system, the concentration is to think of him, Vishnu, not of the lotus in the head. So there are so many modern yogis who actually cheat people with so many processes. But it's a very difficult process. The Shatkriya yoga also, there are hardly anybody who can follow this process. One should have tremendous practice of brahmacharya. One should have so much control over senses and mind. Absolutely no connection with women. But today, so many so-called yogis, they are cheating people. They are minting so much, getting so much money, and they talk of big things, and they get carried away. So that's why I just put this conversation. How Prabhupada was very specific that how by after knowing the basic concept of you are not this body, your spirit, soul, try to know whom you are actually related with, and engage in that person, that the Supreme Lord, by process of devotional service, which is easy process. Okay. So now Prabhupada is pointing out, therefore the Bhakti Yogi should push the life air between the eyebrows, and then blocking the 7 outlets of the life air, he should maintain his aim for going back home, back to Godhead. If he is completely free from all desires for material enjoyment, he should then reach the cerebral hole and give up his material connections, having gone to the Supreme. So now Srila Prabhupada in this purport speaks about how by giving up material connections, we have to a person has to give up material connections. So the yoga is helping in that process. So Prabhupada says that could very much be accomplished by following the Bhakti Yoga process. Prabhupada is driving towards Bhakti Yoga, although in this text it is mentioned how the yogi enters the Brahman platform by breaking through the cerebral hole. He just enters the Brahman platform after having being situated in the Brahman realization. Okay, Prabhupada speaks about Akunta and Vaikunta. We will see what it is. The devotees have full knowledge of the spiritual world, the personality of Godhead, and his transcendental association in unlimited spiritual planets called Vaikunta Lokas. Here in Akunta Drishti is mentioned. Akunta and Vaikunta convey the same import, and only one who has his aim fixed upon the spiritual world and personal association with Godhead can give up his material connections even while living in the material world. This Param and the Parang Dhama mentioned in several places in the Bhagavad Gita are one and the same thing. One thing goes to the Parang Dhama. One who goes to the Param Dhama does not return to the material world. This freedom is not possible even by reaching the topmost loka of the material world. Okay, so the last paragraph where Prabhupada is mentioning about puncturing the cerebral hole. So this is the process by following the Shatkriya Yoga, that one is able to break the cerebral hole. Okay. Now I will go to the next verse. Now we are getting into another important section here. Now we saw that there is a yogi who immediately wants to attain liberation, who is not interested in, who wants to completely cut off all his material desires, and he attains liberation by this Ashtanga Yoga process. By the process of Labdhopashanti, he attains that. So that we, as Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur also mentions, that to be the Krama Mukti. And now this section, verses from 22 to 32, we will see another set of yogi who has some more desires, a little curious to know the other processes or about the other planets. For example, we go on some tour and then suddenly we see one fellow is lost. Oh, very nice garden there. That building is very good. This is very nice. So like that, the yogi also has some interest. Okay, what is there in that higher planets? What is there here? So some interest is there. Prabhupada writes that in one purport. We will see that. So for such persons, again, the Virat Rupa meditation is mentioned, and how he is going to attain the higher destination. How he is going to cross the universe, and how he is going to enter the spiritual abode. That is being mentioned in the series of verses. Are you following? Okay. So process of gradual liberation, gradual ascent through the higher planets. Verses 22 to 32. Okay, now also you can make a note of it. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 28, text 38 to 44. Krishna gives the conclusions of the yoga. You can just read that. Okay, you can please take a look at that. Now, we will just see a summary of what we are going to see in the next 10 verses. Okay, please pay attention. Those yogis who wish to experience improved material enjoyment, such as transference to Brahmaloka, the eightfold mystic siddhis, free travel in outer space, or a situation of his own choosing in one of the millions of planets, must take with them their subtle body when they leave the gross body behind. So these are all the different things. Huh?
Quote.
Sorry?
These are quote from.
These are summaries quotes. These are not from any book. Okay. Okay. Okay, I got diverted. Okay, let me be back to this point. Here, the transference to here, you see what are all other opportunities the yogis have. That we will be seeing in the upcoming verses. Verse after verse we will see. So he can transfer himself to Brahmaloka. He can, while practicing this meditation, he can attain the Ashta Siddhis. And he will be able to travel in outer space. He will also be, there are millions of planets, he can transport himself to any planet. But then again, these are all within the material world. Okay. But again, you have a choice to move freely. Okay. The pure devotees, on the other hand, are concerned only with the spiritual body. They have unrestricted movements throughout all of existence, including the spiritual world. Fruitive workers, gross materialists, can never move unrestrictedly. The yogi who retains the subtle body gradually becomes purified and reaches the highest planet, Brahmaloka, by mystic ascension through the Sishumara, etc. We will see what it is. At the time of final devastation, he may transfer from Brahmaloka to Vaikuntha. In Brahmaloka, the only existing pain is compassion for those unaware of the process of devotional service and who are suffering miseries in the material world. This Prabhupada very nicely highlights those great yogis who are there, who are in the Brahmaloka. They don't have any problem, no miseries, no birth, no old age, no disease, but they have only one suffering. They see the suffering of non-devotees in this material world. They could perceive that and they feel pain. Oh, they are suffering. They do not know the higher process of life, higher purpose of life. They do not know. They feel bad for it. Okay, and also we see how the these particular yogis, they transport themselves. Maharloka, Tapoloka. Then they go to Brahmaloka. From Brahmaloka, along with Brahma, they attain higher. They enter the Vaikuntha if they have picked up devotional service. If they have picked up devotion, they could enter Vaikuntha. Otherwise, they are Brahma Bhona Loka Punaravartino Arjuna. After devastation, again they may wander in this material world. Okay. The yogi may continue his purification and so move upward to the spiritual world. He can do so by merging his ego in the Mahat Tattva. In this way, he comes to the point of pure self-realization, thus attaining perfection, association with the personality of Godhead in complete bliss and satisfaction. This is his constitutional state. Those who attain such devotional perfection are never again attracted by this material world, nor do they ever return. Text 22. However, O king, if a yogi maintains a desire for improved material enjoyments like transference to the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, or the achievement of the eightfold perfections, travel in outer space with the Vaihayasas, or a situation in one of the millions of planets, then he has to take away with him the materially molded mind and senses. Now, in this verse, you can see the various desires that yogi can fulfill. That is being mentioned. He can transfer himself to the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, or he can attain the Ashta Siddhis. He can travel wherever he wants in the outer space. Vaihayasas are there are some elevated beings like Valikalyas are there, no? That those 60,000 Valikalyas, like so many. There are some elevated beings in the higher planetary systems, and so that's what is being mentioned here. So they go with their materially molded mind and senses. So Prabhupada speaks about the Ashta Siddhis here in this purport, how one can get Ashta Siddhis. And so here he says, since a materialist is generally inquisitive to experience what is actually in such planetary systems, he wants to see everything personally. As inquisitive persons tour all over the world to gain direct local experience, the less intelligent transcendentalist similarly desires to have some experience of those planets about which he has heard so many wonderful things. You know, I'm just giving example. You know, Nandana gardens and other things we hear. Oh, it will be very nice there. Sometimes you become more curious. So like that, some of them get curious when they hear some descriptions in the Vedas about the other planetary systems. The yogi can, however, easily fulfill his desire by going there with the present materialistic mind and senses. The prime inclination of the materialistic mind is to lord it over the material world, and all the siddhis mentioned above are features of domination over the world. The devotees of the Lord are not ambitious to dominate a false and temporary phenomenon. On the contrary, a devotee wants to be dominated by the Supreme Predominator, the Lord. A desire to serve the Lord, the Supreme Predominator, is spiritual or transcendental, and one has to attain this purification of the mind and the senses to get admission into the spiritual kingdom. Okay, now text 23. Let's see what he says. The transcendentalists are concerned with the spiritual body. As such, by the strength of the devotional service, austerities, mystic power, and transcendental knowledge, their movements are unrestricted within and beyond the material worlds. The fruity workers or the gross materialists can never move in such an unrestricted manner. So this is an interesting contrast being given in this verse, that these transcendentalists actually they develop they get great knowledge, they get so much siddhis, as it is mentioned here in this verse. See, it is mentioned here. What are all things it's mentioned here in this verse? What they achieve? Vidya, tapaha, yoga, samadhi. So by their practice of austerities, they perform severe austerities according to the instructions of those higher destinations. They follow all those things sincerely there. So they gain all this strength, and as a result of it, they are able to move freely. They can do whatever they want to do. That's what is mentioned here. Prabhupada points out here, by the strength of devotional service, austerities, mystic powers, and transcendental knowledge, everyone can move like Narada Muni or Durvasa Muni. It is said that Durvasa Muni traveled throughout the entirety of material space and part of spiritual space within 1 year only. The speed of the transcendentalists can never be attained by the gross or subtle materialists. Okay. Text 24. O king, when such a mystic passes over the Milky Way by the illuminating Sushumna to reach the highest planet, Brahmaloka, he goes first to Vaishvanara, the planet of the deity of fire, wherein he becomes completely cleansed of all contaminations, and thereafter he goes still higher to the circle of Shishumara to relate with Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. Okay, just to show you, you already know, you are already aware of it, but just to show you what is being explained here. So what the yogi does, the yogi crosses the he crosses the Bhuloka, and then Bhur, Bhuvar, Swarga, and then he goes up. He crosses even the the region of the poles of the Shishumara planets are there. That also he crosses. He goes up. That's what is being mentioned. And first, in this region, there is this Vaishvanara planet where he is purified after entering the fiery planet. He is purified. That's what is being mentioned here. Okay. He crosses the Milky Way, and then he then gradually, step by step. So now he has gone to the Vaishvanara Loka. From Vaishvanara Loka, what other places he goes? Let's see. The Shishumara is the pivot for the turning of the complete universe, and it is called the navel of Vishnu. The yogi alone goes beyond the circle of Shishumara and attains the planet called Maharloka, where purified saints like Bhrigu enjoy a duration of 4,320,000,000 solar years. This planet is worshipable even for the saints who are transcendentally situated. Okay, I will just show you that when we go to the next verse. So in one shot we will see that. Text 26. At the time of the final devastation of the complete universe, the end of the duration of Brahma's life, a flame of fire emanates from the mouth of Ananta, from the bottom of the universe. The yogi sees all the planets of the universe burning to ashes, and thus he leaves for Satyaloka by airplanes used by the great purified souls. The duration of life in Satyaloka is calculated to be 311 trillion 40 billion years. It's such a huge number of years. It is very difficult for us to perceive. It's almost something like infinite, but still that has also got a time. Okay, now when we reach such a discussion, Prabhupada immediately bangs here. You can see here, Prabhupada says, the Srimad Bhagavatam gives us many clues about other planets far, far away from us, which modern planes and spacecraft cannot reach even by imaginary speeds. The statements of Srimad Bhagavatam are accepted by great acharyas like Sridhara Swami, Ramanujacharya and Vallabhacharya. You have a different number there.
Oh.
Yeah, that's because of the. It's not a. In the old edition, there is a mistake. That's what you have. The statements of the Srimad Bhagavatam are accepted by great acharyas like Sridhara Swami, Ramanujacharya, and Vallabhacharya. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu specifically accepts Srimad Bhagavatam as a spotless Vedic authority, and as such, no sane man can ignore the statements of the Srimad Bhagavatam when it is spoken by the self-realized soul, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, who follows in the footsteps of his great father, Srila Vyasadeva, the compiler of all Vedic literatures. In the creation of the Lord, there are many wonderful things we can see with our own eyes every day and night, but we are unable to reach them equipped by modern materialistic science. We should not therefore depend on the fragmentary authority of materialistic science for knowing things beyond the range of scientific purview. Here Srila Prabhupada is very nicely setting the standard, like we saw in the previous chapter, how common sense will not work in trying to understand certain Vedic conclusions. We have to accept it as axiomatic truth. That's the process of acquiring knowledge through the Shabda Praman has to be accepted like that, because that is a methodology to be followed. For example, now someone may say that he will say that atoms are the smallest particle. Now to explain that the atoms are the smallest particles, he will have his own language to speak. The scientist, the physicist will have his own language to speak. But you need to understand the language. Someone else will understand it and they will be able to accept it. But you or me may not be able to understand, because we have not gone through that particular language that is being explained. Are you getting the point? Similarly, the Vedic approach is like this. The Vedic approach is you give oral reception. Basically, we don't have blind faith. Our faith is a reasonable faith, because the knowledge that has come from the Supreme Lord, the Lord is beyond the four defects. Right? This is our premise. Whatever the Lord speaks, whatever the Vedas, other Vedas are Apurusheya. So we just give oral reception to the Vedas. We accept the statements as it is. At this point of time, we may not be able to perceive the explanations that is given in the Vedas, but we accept it and upfront we accept the conclusions of scriptures. That's what Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing here. And but the scientists are with a very challenging spirit. They themselves also have several presumptions before trying to conclude or postulate certain theories. So here we axiomatically accept the statements of the scriptures, and by getting purified over a period of time, by following the strict process that is given in the scriptures, we will be able to appreciate that the statements are certainly true. The Vedic statements are certainly true, and to the degree we are purified, to that degree the knowledge will be revealed about higher dimensions of life. So that's the whole premise with which we approach the Vedas. So this has to be clearly understood. Otherwise, we will be continuously criticizing, and we will always be with doubts in the conclusion, in trying to understand the conclusions of the scriptures. So this is a very basic understanding for all the spiritual practitioners, specifically those who are accepting the Vedas as the authority. They clearly know Vedas are Apurusheya, they are Shabda Brahman, and they get. So that's what Prabhupada is banging here in this purport. The modern scientists, however, are conditioned souls liable to so many errors and mistakes. Therefore, the safe side is to accept the authentic version of Vedic literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, which is accepted unanimously by the great Acharya. So when it boils down, we see why not we accept the scientists or we accept the pure devotees of the Lord. Why we accept the pure devotees of the Lord? Because they are non-envious, they are not greedy, they are not cheaters, they are leading a life of purity, and they don't want to accumulate anything with them. Their only purpose of life is to help everyone to be happy. They themselves are fully happy being people of high caliber quality. So that drives us to hear from such great souls rather than so-called scientists who themselves are cheating. They are not like real scientists who is supposed to find the truth of life, or who should be ready to hear all the views that is presented, but when they always have a filter. They put a filter when it is not within the scientific purview. They immediately filter it. They call it, oh, you are speaking metaphysics. You are anything which is beyond. They say, oh, this is philosophy. They just throw it out like that. So which is not a rational approach. Okay. So that's again a big subject matter. We are not going to get into it. We will see what is a further transgression of the yogi. Okay. So now now in this verse is speaking about the transgression, how the yogi has transgressed the other planets and he has entered this Satyaloka. In that planet of Satyaloka, there is neither bereavement nor old age nor death. There is no pain of any kind, and therefore there are no anxieties, save that sometimes due to consciousness there is a feeling of compassion for those unaware of the process of devotional service, who are subjected to unsurpassable miseries in the material world. So that's what we already, at the beginning of the summary, I explained that. So that's their only worry. Otherwise, they are not worried about anything else. So that's the point. Okay, Prabhupada in this purport to this verse, again he is speaking about the process of understanding the Vedas, and how just because you become an academic scholar, it's not that the Vedas will be revealed to you, or you learn Sanskrit, Vedas will be revealed to you. No, one has to go through the rigid process of submission, following the principles sincerely, becoming pure, develop the qualities of saintliness. One has to become a Brahmana. So all those things Srila Prabhupada is explaining here. Then in that way, we will be able to understand the conclusion of the Vedic statements. Otherwise, what will happen? We will misinterpret the Vedas and we will become like Shringi. This is what he did, no? He knew the mantras, but he never knew the actual purpose. Because of the influence of Kali, his intelligence got degraded and he misused the mantra. So that's what will happen. So Prabhupada gives a warning that unless one becomes a qualified Brahmana under the training of a bona fide spiritual master, one will not be able to clearly understand the subject matter of the Vedas. So that's the main point that Prabhupada is making here in this purport. Okay, I'll just read the last paragraph of this purport. The intelligent person therefore makes a plan to return home, back to Godhead. How he becomes intelligent? Because by properly submitting himself and trying to understand the conclusion of the scriptures. So he becomes intelligent. Such an intelligent person surpasses all the pangs of material existence like birth, death, disease and old age. He is actually happy because he has no anxieties of material existence. But as a compassionate sympathizer, he feels unhappiness for the suffering materialistic men. And thus he occasionally comes before the materialistic men to teach them the necessity of going back to Godhead. All the bona fide acharyas preach this truth of returning home back to Godhead and warn men not to make a false plan of happiness in a place where happiness is only a myth. Okay. Now text 28. Okay, this is interesting. After reaching Satyaloka, the devotee is specifically able to be incorporated fearlessly by the subtle body in an identity similar to that of the gross body. And one after another he gradually attains stages of existence after earthly to watery, fiery, glowing and airy until he reaches the ethereal stage. Now let's look into that. As these yogis, they start to enter into higher planets, you can see that they are not in the gross bodies. They have given up the gross bodies, but they are traveling with more subtle bodies. That we see here. As they go higher and higher, they are into more subtle bodies. And also in this gradual elevation process, it is explained how the more the subtle body, the more the body is purified, the more they give up the coverings, and that's what is explained here. Now we will just see this verse. It's explained here how there are 7 coverings, and they will be penetrating all the 7 coverings, and they'll completely purify themselves before they enter the Brahman. Okay, the spiritual the spiritual platform. Let's open the Goloka chart. So the Shishumara region, which we saw on the pole star, and also the first day the yogi, he transforms himself to from the Vaishvanara Loka. He moves. He goes further up. He goes to Maharloka, and then from Maharloka, And you see when devastation happens, there is a spaceship by which he enters the spaceship, and then from Maharloka, he transforms himself, he goes further high, and then finally he goes up to Satyaloka, that we have seen. That is what now he's in Satyaloka. And now from Satyaloka, how he is further is getting transformed, it's being explained here. Now we can see there are different coverings that we see here. There is first a covering of the earth, then there's a covering of water, and the Bhagavatam explains, the 5th canto, it explains that each and every covering is 10 times bigger than the previous covering. Okay, so let's see what happens now. What Srila Prabhupada says. Devotee fearlessly crossing the 7 layers to enter the spiritual abode. So now one interesting point here. Here the word in this shloka, there is a word, the tato vishesham pratipadhya nirbhayas. This word nirbhaya means without fear, no? The Prabhupada translates it as without any doubt. So here, his name is Bhakti-vaibhava Swami, in one of the class, he explains nicely. He says that without any doubt, because the devotee, when there is no doubt that the Lord is going to protect me, the Lord is going to help me transgress all the obstacles. So when there is no doubt, that will result in what?
No fear.
No fear. That's the point. Yes. So that's the point. Yeah. Okay. Great. So let's proceed further. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, all the universes are clustered together up and down, and each and every one of them is separately sevenfold covered. The watery portion is beyond the sevenfold coverings, and each covering is 10 times more expansive than the previous covering. Now, what is explained here is how the yogi is going to. It's all highly technical, but the main thrust or main point of this purport, Prabhupada points out that how in the universe the coverings are there and how the yogi pierces all those coverings and then he goes up. Okay, that's the main subject matter. So I'm just going to read that. The personality of Godhead who creates all such universes by his breathing period lies above the cluster of the universes. The water of the causal ocean is differently situated than the covering water of the universe. You understand this? Because there is a covering water in the universe, then there is the water of the causal ocean which is above. This water and that water, that differentiation is being explained. Okay. The water that serves as covering for the universe is material, whereas the water of the causal ocean is spiritual. As such, the watery covering mentioned herein is considered to be the false egoistic covering of all living entities, and the gradual process of liberation from the material coverings one after another as mentioned herein is the gradual process of being liberation from false egoistic conceptions of the material gross body and then being absorbed in the identification of the subtle body till the attainment of the pure spiritual body in the absolute realm of the kingdom of God. Srila Sridhar Swami confirms that a part of the material nature after being initiated by the Lord is known as the Mahat Tattva. First there is Pradhana in unmanifested state, and when there is Lord wants to perform the creation, then by his vision, then the Pradhana becomes agitated and then becomes Mahat Tattva. A fractional portion of the Mahat Tattva is called the false ego. A portion of the ego is the vibration of sound, and a portion of sound is atmospheric air. Atmospheric air. So now it's a very logical explanation of how from sound, everything we know from the Bhagavatam that everything, the creation happens everything by sound, by sound vibration. So that's what is explained here. A portion of the airy atmosphere is turned. Okay. A portion of the ego is the vibration of sound, and a portion of sound is atmospheric air. And a portion of the airy atmosphere is turned into forms, and the forms constitute the power of electricity or heat. You see, when there is heat and light, immediately you can see the form. So that's why the link is there like this. Heat produces a smell of the aroma of the earth, and the gross earth is produced by such aroma. And all these combined together constitute the cosmic phenomenon. The extent of the cosmic phenomenon is calculated to be diametrically both ways 4 billion miles. Then the coverings of the universe begin. The first stratum of the covering is calculated to extend 40 billion miles, and the subsequent coverings of the universe are expected of fire, effulgence, air, and ether, one after another, each extending 10 miles further than the previous. So that is what is being explained here. You can see the different coverings: the covering of the earth, water, fire, air, ether, false ego, Mahat Tattva. pradhana is what do you call? It's unmanifested, so that's not there. So that covering everything the yogi crosses, and each covering is 10 times bigger than the previous covering. Okay. Now Prabhupada points out that then the devotee enters one of the Vaikuntha planets where he assumes exactly the same form as the Lord and engages in the loving transcendental service of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of devotional life. Beyond this, there is nothing to be desired or achieved by the perfect yogi. So, for us, specifically for practicing devotees, we offer ourselves in the Sankirtana Yajna. We offer ourselves in a pure devotional service as given by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then what happens? We become fearless. We don't bother how we will cross this ocean, that ocean. For a devotee, how... See, if you see, also in the 8th chapter, we remember, there is this Shukla Paksha and there is Krishna Paksha. But in a devotee, how he is being delivered. If you remember the famous ISKCON painting, there is a big Samudra. In the Samudra, the Lord, comes with the Garuda, and he holds the Shika and then lifts him up and saves him. What Krishna says in the 12th chapter of the Gita, not 12th chapter. Teshamaham samudharta mrityu samsara sagarat bhavami nachirat partha maya veshita chetasam. So, nothing for a devotee to worry. But still, the different ways by which other yogis are transported is being explained here. Okay. The devotee thus surpasses the subtle objects of different senses like aroma by smelling, the palate by tasting, vision by seeing forms, touch by contacting, the vibrations of the ear by ethereal identification, and the sense organs by material activities. So all this subtle attractions he is able to recover, he is able to cross. Okay. Text 30. The devotee thus surpassing the gross and subtle forms of coverings enters the plane of egoism, and in that status he merges the material modes of nature, ignorance and passion into this point of neutralization, and thus reaches egoism in goodness. After this, all egoism is merged into the Mahat Tattva, and he comes to the point of pure self-realization. You just rewind the tape. When the jiva comes to the material world, he comes like this only. From Mahat Tattva, all these things he picks up. Then first he gets the ego, and then from ego, and then later, mind is born from Rajoguna. Like that, correct? Mind is born from Rajoguna, correct? And no. Yeah, mind is from Satoguna, right? Yeah. Mind is from Satoguna. The intelligence, anyway, I don't remember exact order. Intelligence from Rajoguna, is it? Yeah. And there is a particular verse which speaks about that. Then gradually, then one by one he acquires the different layers. In each layer he acquires, and then when he comes to the material world, he is completely influenced by the illusion. So here the reverse process happens actually. So one by one he gives up, and then when he crosses all those coverings, he is free of all those coverings, and he is reinstated in his constitutional position. Okay, let's go back. Pure self-realization, as we have several times discussed, is a pure consciousness of admitting oneself to the eternal servitor of the Lord. Very nicely Prabhupada puts it in the very first verse of the purport, that the consciousness becomes completely pure. When we say consciousness is pure, that means there is no more covering, no more external identification. So that is the status where all the coverings are removed. Okay. Perfect purification of the mind is made possible when one is fixed in the conviction of being the eternal servitor of the Lord. Therefore, simple attainment of goodness is also a material mode. One has to surpass this stage of material goodness and reach the point of purified goodness or Vasudeva Sattva. Many times we have discussed this. Shabdam Vishuddham Vasudeva Sabditam. This is what 4th canto of the Bhagavatam explains. This Vasudeva Sattva helps one to enter into the kingdom of God. Okay. Prabhupada here makes a mockery of the so-called yoga practice of the modern age. They will not be able to cross anything. The so-called yoga practice by the professional protagonists may be physiologically beneficial, but such small successes cannot help one in the attainment of spiritual emancipation as mentioned herein. Whatever that we have seen so far is a very serious business. So much of control of senses, control of mind, tapasya, heavy vratas. It's not some cheap yoga that is being promoted in the modern age. This is a very serious business. So now, today we were just reading the 9th canto of the Bhagavatam about Shaubari Muni, how much tapasya he was performing, isn't it? He was sitting under the sea for so many years. Who can do such kind of tapasya? It's a serious business. Not anybody will give some mantra, he will just go and approach some guru, and then you do whatever you want to do, at the same time you do this yoga also. It doesn't work like that. So that's what Prabhupada is criticizing here. Okay, Prabhupada here points out, after having said all these things, he very clearly points out that how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave the most simple process, yet the very powerful process of this Bhakti Yoga. And by taking up the simple process of Bhakti Yoga, which starts with Tannama Grihanadibihi, isn't it? This is what Yamadharmaraj says. Etavan eva lokesmin pumsam dharma parasmritaha bhakti yogo bhagavati tannama grihanadibihi. So this devotional service begins with the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. And Prabhupada, he gives a very elaborate purport. In the elaborate purport, he discusses about the 3 levels of chanting, and also one should not commit any offenses in the chanting, and also how the Bhakti Lata Beach, Bhakti Lata creeper, it gradually grows and then enters the abode of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, Goloka. If you carefully protect it, water it, and then protect it and water it, then that will grow into a big creeper entering the abode of the Supreme Lord. So in this regard, you can make a note of Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 19, text 151 to 62. You can take a look at that. Okay, so in this stage, the devotee has no more attraction for this world. That means he has attained the perfection. He is not interested in any material things. Tenatmanatmanam upaiti shantam anandam anandamayo vasane etam gating bhagavatim gatoya savai punarneha vishajjatenga. Only the purified soul can attain the perfection of associating with the personality of Godhead in complete bliss and satisfaction in his constitutional state. Whoever is able to renovate such devotional perfection is never again attracted by this material world, and he never returns. It's a good shloka for us to remember, because many times we hear in the Gita also, no? What Gita? Natad bhasayate suryo nasashanko na pavakaha yad gatvana nivartante tad dhama paramama. Whomsoever attains that dhama, tad dhama param, my abode, yad gatva na nivartante. So same thing is said here. It is said here, etam gating bhagavatim gatoya savai punarneha vishajjatenga. So they will not again come back to this abode, material world. Okay. So Prabhupada points out that how the pure devotees are not interested in impersonal merging or the Brahmajyoti race. They are only interested in the personal abode. So that's the one major aspect in this purport Prabhupada is speaking. And also Prabhupada is pointing out that the Bhakti Yogi is not interested in any other processes. For example, the Bhakti Yogi, being completely engaged in the Lord's service, has no attraction for any other process of liberation like Jnana or Yoga. A pure devotee is a 100% devotee of the Lord and nothing more. So that means what? A pure devotee is a 100% devotee of the Lord and nothing more. In very simple terms, how can we understand this? So that means what a pure devotee is interested in. With whatever you have heard about Bhakti, can you just say?
Only to satisfy and please Lord.
That's the whole key. This is what a pure devotee is interested in. Nothing. He has no interest. His only interest is Krishna pleased with his endeavor. Then he is satisfied. That's all. This is pure devotion. This is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when somebody rises to this state, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very pleased. All pure devotees are like that. Only interest is to see the pleasure of Supreme Lord. That's all. This is the beauty of pure devotion. Krishna is interested in such a devotee. Such a devotee he gives himself. Okay. So Prabhupada again bangs on the rest of the purport, how one has to become a pure devotee, and this pure devotion is the topmost attainment. So and that's what Prabhupada here is calling as the pure. At the end of the purport, I'm just going to read. The pure devotee is only favorably engaged in the service of the Lord without any hope of emolument. Emolument means he's not interested in anything. He's only interested in pure devotion. This will bring about love of God, or the stage of Shantam and Anandam, as stated in this verse. The Shantam and Anandam for a devotee is when a devotee becomes Shanti, and when a devotee is peaceful and bliss.
When he is favorably engaged in the service.
That's all. When he attempts to please the Lord, that's this please. And for that he may undergo suffering also. But that is his bliss. This is the amazing workings of bhakti. He is undergoing so much suffering, anxiety, and that he relishes. Because the Lord is being pleased by that. So that's why in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching, we see the last verse of the Sikshashtaka. Aslishya va padaratang pinashtumam adharshanan marmahatam karotuva. Even if you don't appear in front of me, you make me broken hearted. You put me to any suffering. But doesn't matter, we will go on be serving you. You are our worshipable master, birth after birth. Yeah. Well, I mixed up two verses. I was speaking about Nadanam Najanam also. So anyway, that's the whole point. Okay, now we are going to enter another section of the Bhagavatam here in this particular chapter. Now Shukadeva Goswami, after having said all those things to please the other rishis who are sitting there, who might have proposed all the different methodologies, now Shukadeva Goswami comes back to the main fold, explaining that now bhakti is all that one has to take up. So he's indirectly hinting to Parikshit Maharaj, I know you have only 7 days, also I told you about all these things, but actually your focus should be on bhakti. Still that question is being answered. Which question? Can you relate?
What one should do at the time.
So chapter 1, Canto 1, chapter 19, text 38. That question is going to again give a straight answer to that question. Okay, let's listen this. Shukadeva Goswami assures Maharaj Parikshit that this Bhagavad Katha is exactly in accordance with the Vedic version, for Lord Krishna personally taught it to Brahma, turning from the difficult process of gradual elevation by yoga practice to a different yet most auspicious means of deliverance. Shukadeva now presents direct devotional service of Lord Krishna. He begins by declaring that Sri Chaturmukha Brahmadeva, the first Vedic sage in this universe, studied the Shastra thrice with great care and concluded that there is no greater teaching than Ratiratman, loving attraction to Sri Krishna, the self of all selves. One seeking to attain the fruit of this teaching should adopt the direct method of hearing about Krishna. After the aim of his life is rectified, such a sincere devotee will go back to Godhead, under the shelter of Krishna's divine lotus feet. The Lord is in everyone's heart, and we are already fully dependent upon him. One can perceive this through his intelligence. It is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. Hearers of nectarian Krishna Katha purify themselves of material desires, and without loitering in the mundane creation go back to Godhead. Shukadeva Goswami has now directly answered Parikshit Maharaj's question about his duty at the time of death. Now we will see what is the direct answer. Okay, text 32. So just to give you a quick synopsis. So here now he, after having explained all these things, now he says that you have to engage in pure devotional service. And in fact, this is what Brahma also says. Brahma also heard this whole message from Krishna. He read the Vedas 3 times and his conclusion is pure devotional service. And also you will see the effect of pure devotional service. Your heart will be completely purified and you will be in great bliss. Shukadeva Goswami points out that. Okay, let's continue. Text 32. Ete Shriti te Nripaveda Gite Tvaya Viprishte cha Sanatane cha Yevai Pura Brahmana Ahatushta Aradito Bhagavan Vasudevaha. Your Majesty, Maharaj Parikshit, know that all that I have described in reply to your proper inquiry is just according to the version of the Vedas, and it is eternal truth. This was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Lord Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. So 2 different paths described in the Vedas, the 2 different ways of reaching the spiritual sky and thereby getting emancipation from all material bondage, namely either the direct process of reaching the kingdom of God. What was the direct process? In this particular, you are right in one sense, direct process, indirect process, that is there. But in this particular chapter, what we saw?
Devotees.
One is that path by which he is directly wants to go immediately is trying to attain liberation, and then another one, the gradual path of liberation. Okay. See, Prabhupada writes it here. You can see either the direct process of reaching the kingdom of God or the gradual process through the higher planets of the universe are set forth exactly according to the version of the Vedas. the Vedic versions in this connection are, okay, the Prabhupada is referring to giving two quotes from the Upanishads, how by becoming free of material desires and diseases of the heart, one will be able to conquer death and enter the kingdom of God. So, what is the point? The point is that here Brahma heard this from the Lord, the Lord explained both the paths to the Lord. So that's what Prabhupada is pointing out here. So I'm just going to proceed further. Prabhupada in the purport, he says that better for us to accept the direct message of the Vedas, because we cannot test the Vedas. Vedas are Auparushaya. So the intelligence is to accept the message in Parampara. So that's because here Shukadeva Goswami is concluding saying that this is what Brahma heard from Krishna. So that's a Vedic knowledge, has to be accepted in Parampara. So that's what he says. Okay. Now text 33 to 37. Here it is mentioned, direct devotional service is the best and the auspicious path. So chant, hear and glorify the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Okay. Text 33. Nagyato nya shivah panta vishata sangsruta viha vasudeve bhagavati bhakti yogo yato bhaved. For those who are wandering in the material universe, there is no more auspicious means of deliverance than what aims at the direct devotional service of Lord Krishna. Yeah, we have seen so far that Brahma has heard from the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna the two paths that is explained before, as we saw. The one is the direct path of trying to immediately liberate, not going through other planets to the spiritual abode, and then another one is the indirect path, going through the various planetary systems and then getting gradually purified and then entering through the Brahmaloka and piercing all the coverings, one enters the spiritual abode. So after having explained now, Brahma is, after studying the entire Vedas, he is going to conclude that Bhakti Yoga is the topmost process. That's what Shukadeva Goswami is also pointing out. Now, direct devotional service is the best and auspicious path. So chant, hear and glorify the Supreme Lord Krishna is being the main subject matter of the rest of the verses. Okay. Nahyato gnya shivah panta vishata samsruta viha vasudeve bhagavati bhakti yogo yato bhavet. For those who are wandering in the material universe, there is no more auspicious means of deliverance than what aims at the direct devotional service of Lord Krishna. So in this verse, it is clearly explained that the best path to follow is to take up the process of bhakti, and Srila Prabhupada points out that all the acharyas also, they are explaining the point that everything else, all other processes are simply waste of time. Srila Sridhara Swami and all other acharyas like Srila Jiva Goswami agree that Bhakti Yoga is not only easy, simple, natural and free from trouble, but is the only source of happiness for the human being. So by pleasing Krishna, one can get the real happiness. Now again, this is again an important verse. The conclusion of Brahma. What did Brahma conclude? Okay. Bhagavan Brahma Kartsnena Trir Anvikshya Manishaya Tad Adhyavasyat Kutasto Ratiratman Yato Bhaved. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times. Trir Anvikshya Manishaya. And after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, Ratiratman Yato Bhave, is the highest perfection of religion. So this was Brahma's conclusion after studying the Vedas 3 times. Now, just to give a quick hint, many times we hear from our senior devotees, a spiritual master, go through all the Prabhupada books 3 times. Have you heard this? After that, so this is where it is coming from, because this is what I understand, and that we have to, Brahma himself studied the Vedas 3 times and he came to a good conclusion. So we also, for us, Vedas are Srila Prabhupada's books. Srila Prabhupada, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavad Gita, and all other books, whatever Srila Prabhupada has given to us, we have to go through all those things 3 times patiently. Along with that, engage in the service of the Lord. Parallelly engaging in the service of the Lord, submitting ourselves, keeping ourselves in a very humble mood. We engage in the service of the Lord. Then what will be the result of it? The result of it is that at the end of our study and our service, we will be able to develop attraction for Krishna, taste for Krishna's service, His name, His form, and like that. The Vedas were taught to Brahmaji in the beginning of the material creation. Although Brahmaji heard the Vedic instructions directly from the personality of Godhead, in order to satisfy the inquisitiveness of all prospective students of the Vedas, Brahmaji, just like a scholar, studied the Vedas 3 times, as is generally done by all scholars. He studied with great attention, concentrating on the purpose of the Vedas, and after scrutinizingly examining the whole process, he ascertained that becoming a pure, unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna is the topmost perfection of all religious principles. So this is the conclusion of Brahmaji himself. And what does it speak of so many Vedavada Rathas who have different... So what is the goal of the Vedas? There are different goals. There are as many goals, as many branches, there are as many goals. So many other people have different ideas. But there is only one goal. Vedascha sarvai ahameva vedya vedanta krip vedavat eva chaham. Okay, I'm just proceeding further. Okay, now we are coming to an important section. Now after having come to know how to know who is that Bhagavan. Now this is the thing. Now here he is saying that you have to take shelter of Bhagavan. You have to worship the Lord. So our real object should be, our goal should be to develop love for Krishna. Ratir Atma, he says that, right? Now, how to, what is the first step that we need to take? What should be done? So now here, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, in a very logical way, he is trying to establish that, first of all, you know that Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is the actual controller of everything. He is the supreme enjoyer. How do we know that? Now he is giving a sutra here. He is giving a formula here. Bhagavan sarva bhuteshu lakshita swatmana harihi. Drishyair buddhyadibhir drashta lakshanair anumapakaihi. Okay? The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is in every living being along with the individual soul. So that's the first 2 lines which says. And now how to know that the Lord is there in the individual soul, in all the individual souls? And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. Because see, in this material world, people are always interested in to know everything by seeing, by hypothesis, being by Hanumana. They would like to do analysis and they like to see. That's how they perceive. So he says that you can also perceive the Lord, perceive yourself, perceive the Lord, and you can take shelter of Him. So this is the message here Shukadeva Goswami is giving. So now let's go through this purport. Please pay attention. You really need concentration on this, and very systematically it is being presented here. So let's go through it. I'm going to read the entire purport, but I'm going to here and there give you comments how the logic flows. Okay? Prabhupada very systematically has explained it. We need to go through it. The general argument of the common man is that since the Lord is not visible to our eyes, how can one either surrender unto Him or render transcendental loving service unto Him? It's a common question, correct? To such a common man, here is a practical suggestion given by Srila Shukadeva Goswami as to how one can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. So we will use the reason, we will use the logic, and we can see practically with the logic, we can see that the Lord can be seen. Okay, that's the whole point. Okay. Actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present materialized senses. But when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude, there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy, and such a pure devotee of the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. Ata Sri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahyam indriyai Sevonmukhe jigvado swayam eva spuratyadaha. He can perceive that intelligence in a form of guidance by the Paramatma, a plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. The presence of the Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize even for the common man. So now here, Srila Prabhupada is giving the what are we going to achieve. So he is saying that with the help of Paramatma we can realize the presence of the Supreme Lord. But how are we going to do about that? Now Prabhupada gives a step-by-step process. Using intelligence, understand you are different from the body. Difference between the seer and the seen. So one can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. He may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. Okay, now see, we have thinking, we have feeling, we have thinking, feeling, willing. All these things are there. So immediately, first of all, we understand that I exist. That means that I am a person, I exist, I have thoughts, I have desires. So I exist. This is the first thing. Okay. Now, so I may not be reading everything. Okay. Here and there, I'm going to just comment. You please do your homework. Now, in this first paragraph, Prabhupada is trying to point out that we can easily identify that we are different from this body. We are different from this leg. We are different from the hand. We are different from what we see. So, Prabhupada says that when we see an object and ourselves, there is a seer and the seen. Okay, we are the seer, and there is seen. What is seen? Any object is seen. So there are two different things present. He says seer and the seen. Okay. Now, next point Prabhupada is trying to establish. By using little intelligence, you can understand that the seer is not independent. Okay, the seer is not independent. How the seer is not independent? Now let's see. By little use of intelligence, we can also readily agree that the living being who sees the things beyond himself by ordinary vision has no power to see or to move independently. For example, now I am able to see here some students are sitting. If there is no light, if it is Amavasya, completely dark, I cannot see anything. You see, I have a limitation with my vision. Okay, and unless you all three students have come here, okay, I will not be able to see you also. Is it? So there is another limitation. By some arrangement, you all of you are here. So I am able to see. If you are not here, I cannot see. So that's the whole point. So this is with not even with one sense organ. Not only with seeing. Same thing with smelling, same thing with hearing, same thing with tasting, or with all the senses. So that's what Prabhupada explains in the continuation with the purport. Okay. Now I am going to go to this particular section. And it is equally evident that our objects of perception are nothing but the products of the inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy. Correct? Now there is a projector here, there is a Kindle here, there is a watch here, there are living beings here, there are books here, there is chairs here. Everything is what? Everything is a various permutations and combinations of nature's elements, or the nature you could say. So again there is a constraint, right? It's not that I can see whatever I want to see. Whatever is available you can see. So there is a restriction, there is a limitation. So we conclude that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses as well as the objects of perception are material. Okay, so I can. Okay, I'll just read one more sentence ahead before that. As this conclusively proves that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion, and as we undoubtedly feel our existence being conditioned by nature's energy. So, you are able to follow this? We are conditioned, that's the whole point. I have a conditioning, not that I am totally independent. I have conditioning, conditioned by the nature's objects. I have conditioning by my senses also. So, I am conditioning means I am controlled. So, I am controlled is the point that Prabhupada is trying to convey. That means there is some other controller. This is the next logical conclusion you will come to. So another point Prabhupada is making here is that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses as well as the objects of perception are material. So I am able to see all the objects. The objects are material because it is inanimate, and I am animate. I can move, I can think, I can feel, I can will, but the objects do not have that. So I am spirit, the objects are material. So this is another logical conclusion. Okay. Prabhupada is continuing. The spiritual quality of the seer is manifest in our dissatisfaction with the limited state of materially conditioned existence. That is the difference between spirit and matter. This is very interesting. Now, you can see I am able to experience sometimes happiness, sometimes distress. For example, let's take a machine. A machine records a red light. Okay? And after recording a red light, you can even give a message. I see a red light. The machine can give a message like that. But the machine does not actually has the experience of the red light. Right? But whereas we have the experience of the red light. So the point here Prabhupada is trying to make here that now by that we can see that there is the human being has got consciousness, the inanimate object does not have consciousness. So that is one point. But another point that we can see here is that there is a difference between spirit and matter in terms of dissatisfaction experienced by the spirit. But the matter does not experience anything. That's why it's called as Jada Tattva. It's Jada. Okay. So now Prabhupada, he further in this purport continues to bang the point that there are less intelligent people. They provide argument that matter, the life has originated from matter. Okay, that you can see in the purport. He speaks about that. So I'm not going to read that. I'm going to go further down. So he says, therefore, it is definite that matter and spirit are two different identities. And this conclusion is arrived at by the use of intelligence. So by using our intelligence, we can see that matter is different, the spirit is different. And now with a little further use of intelligence, we come to the point of accepting that the things which are seen cannot be animate unless someone is the user or director of the intelligence. So whatever that we see, actually someone is behind that particular object to move it or to bring it to the particular situation, like that. Are you able to follow? So you need a director of the intelligence. So direction from higher intelligence. Now we are many times amazed how certain fishes are moving, how certain birds are moving from one place to another. Or example, let's say we are driving the car, okay, driving the car quite fast. Suddenly our legs goes and applies the brake. How are you applying the brake? No, did we do some analysis? Automatically there is an instinct. From where is that instinct coming from? Where is that intelligence? Who is giving us that intelligence? We can think about it. See, Bhagavatam is such a subject matter, it is always making us to think loudly, try to understand the subject matter. So here logically we are being pushed to try to understand any event that is taking place. So when one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man. And so a living being is dependent on intelligence or the direction of a superior being. We can think if there is no intelligence, what will be our situation? We will not know how to act, what to do. But constantly we are being guided what to do, what not to do. We are getting some energy of intelligence. Such intelligence is all pervading. Every living being has his intelligence, and this intelligence being the direction of some higher authority is just like the direction of a father. A father gives to his son. The higher authority who is present and residing within every individual living being is the super self. So here Prabhupada is concluding that this higher intelligence, that intelligence with which we are acting, actually is generated from the super self. Makes sense, right? Otherwise, what is the explanation? How are you able to do? How are the birds from somewhere from Algeria, it is coming to Scotland? For specific season, it flies. Who is giving the route? Who is giving the directions? How the, just let's take another simple example. We have many times we see the kitten, the baby kitten, the kitten is there, and cat does it take a special seminar. Now I'm going to teach you how to suckle the milk. That's not being taught. Immediately the kitten puts its mouth on the breast of the cat, and it starts to suckle the milk. Right? Who is giving this intelligence? Who is giving this training? From where? We have to, the logical conclusion is that some higher intelligence. So the higher intelligence comes from a higher intelligent person. That higher intelligent person is the super soul. Because individually everybody has certain constraints. According to different bodies, different intelligence works. Dog can sniff, birds can see from vultures can see from such a high distance it can see the dead body. Different people have given different intelligence. according to the various bodies and different desires, right? So that from that we can understand that the super soul seated inside the heart is driving that intelligence of the conditioned jiva. Are you able to follow? At this point in our investigation, we may consider the following question. On one hand, we realize that all our perceptions and activities are conditioned by arrangements of material nature. Yet we also ordinarily feel and say, I am perceiving or I am doing. Therefore, we can say that our material senses of perception and action are moving because we are identifying the self with the material body, and that the superior principle of the super self is guiding and supplying us according to our desire. By taking advantage of the guidance of the super self in the form of intelligence, we can either continue to study and to put into practice our conclusion that I am not this body, or we can choose to remain in the false material identification, fancying ourselves to be the possessors and doers. It's very interesting, huh? So, now using the superior intelligence, either you come to a conclusion I am not this body, or you just be stubborn and then do not accept and just do whatever that you are doing. Okay. Now when you know there is a superior intelligence, now you dovetail your intelligence. Our freedom consists in orienting our desire either toward the ignorant material misconception of the true spiritual conception. We can easily attain to the true spiritual conception by recognizing the super self, Paramatma, to be our friend and guide, by dovetailing our intelligence with the superior intelligence of the Paramatma. So this is what we have free will. When we just dovetail it to the will of Paramatma, then our life, spiritual life begins. The super self and the individual self are both spirit, and therefore the super self and the individual self are both qualitatively one. So Prabhupada here is speaking about simultaneous oneness and difference. Now, so far as common sense is concerned, we come to the conclusion that there are three identities. So far with all the logical approach, analysis, what is the conclusion that we have come to? There is a spirit, there is a matter, and there is super spirit, who is controller of both spirit and matter. Okay. Now if we go to till now we have come to this much logical conclusion. See, as what by our logic we can come only to one specific conclusion. What conclusion? There is a controller. Okay, Haribo, are you there? So there is a controller. The controller, the descriptions about the controller, how does he look like, what are his likes and dislikes, or what does the controller does. He only does the controlling, that is his business. So all those details, we have to go to higher scriptures, higher books. We have to approach the higher books. So that's why now Prabhupada, he takes a discussion. Now if we go to the Bhagavad Gita or the Vedic intelligence, we can further understand that all three identities, namely matter, individual spirit and super spirit, are dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How do you say that? They are dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Any hint?
Because
how do you know? You see, so far we spoke about the Paramatma. Now Prabhupada says that we are all dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How do you say that?
Because matter is also limited and we are also
matter is limited, we are limited.
So ultimately the last super soul, the higher authority is...
Super soul is the higher authority. Finished. Now where is Supreme Personality of Godhead is coming here?
Paramatma is partial expansion.
That's the point. Now that's the link. Paramatma is the expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And any shloka for that, for having read the Bhagavad Gita. We are speaking about Bhagavatam. Now from Gita, when Krishna speaks about, see, the Lord as Paramatma, he is overseeing the material creation. Okay. No, it's a famous verse when the Gita Krishna says, how the entire vibhutis, everything is created, everything is being, everything is controlled, everything. What? How does he? Ekam stena stito jagat, Krishna says, no? So that's the point I'm trying to say. So that's how Prabhupada relates it in this purport. So Prabhupada says that the Lord is, Supreme Personality of Godhead is Purushottama, and he is the one who is actually is the cause of all the causes. But as Paramatma, in his Paramatma feature he is actually he is in each and every self, he is accompanying the self, and that's what he is doing. So let's read what Prabhupada says. So Prabhupada nicely puts that the Supreme Personality of Godhead dominates all over the material world by his partial representation only. God is great, and he cannot be simply an order supplier of the individual selves. Therefore, the super self cannot be a full representation of the Supreme Self, Purushottama, the absolute personality of Godhead. Realization. So very nicely Prabhupada is taking it forward. Prabhupada says that, what is it? He will just be all the time with you, guiding you. He is that super self, he does not have anything else to do. He has some higher things to do. So definitely there should be someone who is above this super self. That is Purushottama, he says. That is Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada quotes from the Bhagavad Gita is a preliminary conception of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the further explanation of the signs of Godhead. So now Prabhupada concludes this purport by saying that, so if you're really intelligent, if you're really smart, then you understand that you are very insignificant. Of course, Prabhupada didn't try to put those words, but this is the point. You are very insignificant. Just by my intelligence, I can't understand everything in this world. I need your mercy. So, if we can seek for the guidance of the Supreme Lord, so the Lord will give us intelligence how to act in this material world and how to come out of this material world. The Lord will act. So, this is a very logical presentation, and this is the great work of Srila Jiva Goswami has explained this in a very amazing way. And so this is the great work of our great acharyas, how they are very logically presenting, and then though for those who are crazy, who try to ask questions, who try to defend without any logical premise, there are so many, they can be, let them just keep questioning. But anybody who applies the logic and very patiently thinks about this logical explanation given here, definitely should drive them to understand about the higher truths from the Vedic scriptures. Okay. Okay. Now, so therefore, what should be done? Therefore, it is essential for every human being to tasmat sarvatmana rajan hari sarvatra sarvadha shrottavya kirtitavyascha smartavyo bhagavan nranam. O King, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. Therefore, always and everywhere, hear and glorify the Supreme Lord. Again, the importance, Prabhupada is very much giving the importance to hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, by hearing, we will become more convinced, and we will take up to this Sanatana Dharma or the Bhagavata Dharma, and we will please the Supreme Lord, which is the goal of life. The three processes are mentioned here. By these three processes, we can attain perfection. Okay. Now, let's go to the next verse, text 37. In text 37, it is explained that, so those who are drinkers of the Srimad Bhagavatam, what happens to them? Pibanti ye bhagavata atmanas satam katamritam shravana puteshu sambritam punanti te vishaya vidhushita shayam vrajanti tacharana charoruhantikam. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment. What is the result of it? Your material enjoyment, you are purified from material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him. And what we do, we engage in transcendental loving service. So these are the two results of the engagement in oral reception. So hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada very much again emphasizes on the glories of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And he says that this is a perfect process which is being followed by all the great personalities, and it is approved by all great devotees also. So that is the whole gist of this purport Prabhupada is speaking. So we got the answer for these two questions. Which question? The question of chapter 1, Canto 1, chapter 19, text 38. Again, very clear information is given by Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore can also refer to that. Therefore, you please engage. Shrotavya kirtitavyascha smartavyascha Bhagavan Ranam smartavyascha chata bhayam. Everything is mentioned here. Okay. So now you can refer to, since I don't have time, I would request you to do a little homework. Please refer to the verses which again Shukadeva Goswami is repeating to answer the same question which is asked in the Canto 1, chapter 19, text 38. Canto 12, chapter 3, text 49 to 51. You can refer to that. In that, how he is like Kalaya Dosha Nidhi Rajan Asti Ekohe Mahadguna, all the series of verses he speaks. And then also you can refer to the text, Canto 12, chapter 4, text 40. So final conclusion of this chapter, the Lord who is seated in the heart, one has to engage in pure devotion. So Shukadeva Goswami gives a very clear conception after having explained the direct and the indirect paths of Ashtanga Yoga process and the process of meditating the Virat Rupa. He concludes with the perfection of perfection that could be attained by following the process of Bhakti Yoga. So we stop here. Do you have any questions or comments?
So it was mentioned that there is a direct process, though not undergoing the natural process of death. So the yogi follows the direct.
Not undergoing natural.
Means
There is a direct
sequences,
process.
Sequences.
So there are two processes. One is the direct process. Is directly the yogi is performing the yoga process, and then he cuts off all the material desires by Paramatma meditation, and then by mechanical means he tries to leave the body and goes to the he elevates himself to the he transgresses the material universe. And another process is the indirect process, by which step by step he is crossing the other higher upper planetary systems, and then he crosses the different layers and enters the spiritual world. Now, what's the question?
Mechanical process, will it not be considered as a suicidal process? Means I'm saying because you are voluntarily ending your life.
No, here this is not a process by which okay, the question is like this. So is it not something similar to committing suicide? No, it's not something. It is not similar to committing suicide, because by this process you are completely in control of your senses and mind. Rather, we would say that the Labdhopashanti stage is a stage that almost you are in Brahman realization. Not that you are out of frustration or out of irritation, you are just trying to give up the body. No, you are ready. You don't want to have any more material enjoyment in this world. But rather, the suicide is something you are frustrated and you want to try something else. So you said, oh, enough of it. I don't want to see this torture. But this is not out of that. This is, you are fully realized that spiritual emancipation is the best process. So now enough of whatever that I have done in this world. Now I want to go back to, like Bhishma also was ready to leave at his own will. So these yogis who have practiced so much out of his own will, like we heard about Prithu Maharaj also, he did all his things. He said, okay, it's time for me to leave. I want to leave. So it's not a suicide in that sense. Okay, is it clear? Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.